pinnacle of human perfection.
Welcome to Unbiased and On the Fence. I'm Shane, so glad you could join me. Well, this one is all about our chakra energy centers. Comes from the Law of One material, and I think it's really interesting that as it relates to catalysts and things that come about every day, it's real helpful to see this matrix or simulation as what it is, because it forces you to realize that nothing comes by accident. You know, we all have our buttons that can get pushed, and they're getting pushed on purpose to help you deal with the things you have problems dealing with. And seeing it as a simulation or a game or a play or however you want to see it will help you to realize that nothing happens by accident or coincidence. This stuff is all happening and will continue to happen until you learn to deal with it properly. And so it's not so much saying that it's not real as much as it's saying that pay attention to everything going on, and learn from it, and don't let anything slip by without understanding why it came and why you're supposed to be dealing with those certain issues. It does come in handy to realize it isn't real, just sort of like the movie Divergent, when she was able to perform certain tasks by understanding this isn't real and getting over fear. So fear is a big way of it's a big help to view it as a simulation, and the fact that it's not real when it comes to fear and just uncertainty about the future. But other than that, it's important to notice that, you know, all this stuff happens for a reason. So this is there'll be a link, and there is a link in the description for the law of one.info under the heading of balancing, talking about how we become more balanced as individuals. And the light, the material speaks of, I had to paraphrase a lot because this is already going to be probably at least 20-minute video, and they explain a lot, and I'll paraphrase a lot, so you can go and look up the material to see it in depth. But they basically explain the love light, or the infinite light from the infinite creator coming in, and it comes into the planetary sphere, the globe, and there's these points of you know, we consider them to be these sacred sites where the energy is stronger and it pours into the planet, and then it actually comes out to us, and we pick up on these the same way the planet's got its sacred energy sites. We have our chakras that picks up on this energy, and the light is divided into colors, and each color that goes into each corresponding chakra zone should be able to flow through us and then emit out white light. And Ra talks about the importance of not having any blockages in any of your chakras, and that it's actually more important for you to have a real balance with all of your energy zones than it is to just have one that's really bright, because any of them that's overly bright and others that aren't activated or blocked are not going to emit white, pure, and infinite intelligent light out. It's going to have a hue to it. And so yeah, we've got to be as balanced as possible to emit this white light and become vessels, if you will, for this intelligent infinity, or this love light we're supposed to be putting out. And so yeah, so we're putting out this bright white light, and we have to activate all of these chakra zones, and to where they're all lit evenly. And it's better for them all to be lit evenly than, like I said, one of them to be brighter than the other. So I'll get right into the material here. Let's see. So this comes from session 15, question 12. The questioner asks, how does an individual go about balancing himself? What is the first step? I am Ra. The steps are only one. That is, an understanding of the energy centers which make up the mind-body-spirit complex. This understanding may be briefly summarized as follows. The first balancing is of the Malkuth, or Earth, vibratory energy complex, called the red ray complex. And understanding and acceptance of this energy is fundamental. The next energy complex, which may be blocked, is the emotional or personal complex, also known as the orange ray complex. This blockage will often demonstrate itself as personal eccentricities or distortions with regard to self conscious understanding or acceptance of self. The third blockage resembles most closely to that which you call ego. It is the yellow ray or solar plexus center. Blockages in this center will often manifest as distortions towards power manipulation and other social behaviors concerning those close and those associated with the mind body spirit complex. So the people close to you and that you're associated with, basically. Those with blockages in these first three energy centers, or nexi, will have continuing difficulties in ability to further their seeking of the law of one. And I think that's really important because a lot of people that you try to share things with, if they're closed-minded, that's really a result of the ego, the I know better than what you are saying. And you can see how that I know better mentality causes further blockages further up through the other chakra zones. So I continue into the fourth. The center of heart, or green ray, is the center from which third density beings may springboard, shall we say, toward infinite intelligence. Blockages in this area may manifest as difficulties in expressing what you may call universal love or compassion, which I've noticed is another issue with closed-minded people and people that have certain belief systems that cause them to. I know when I was a Christian, we would say, hate the sin and love the sinner, but many times that didn't happen. It resulted in a very unloving, uncompassionate attitude towards other people. So the blue ray center of energy streaming is the center which, for the first time, is outgoing as well as inpouring. Those blocked in this area may have difficulty in grasping the spirit-mind complexes of its own entity and further difficulty in expressing such understandings of self. Entities blocked in this area may have difficulties in accepting communication from other mind-body-spirit complexes. The next center is the pineal or indigo-ray center. Those blocked in this center may experience a lessening of the influx of intelligent energy due to manifestations which appear as unworthiness. Now this reminds me of the part I had to add to the Golden Child where the chosen one, the Eddie Murphy character, is sort of this unlikely candidate to do the work he's doing. And, a lot of these awakened Mandela effect awakened people like myself, by many we would be considered misfits. And a lot of us view ourselves that way. And I think that's getting into showing how we can be actually blocking our pineal chakra by this unworthiness we feel. It's sort of like the opposite of the ego. And I know that I've been wanting to open up my pineal chakra so that I can, I know a lot of gifts come through this pineal chakra zone. And unworthiness can keep you from being able to unlock that, or it can block that. So that's important, I thought, because I'm sure I'm not the only one in that area. So this is that of which you spoke. And you can see this is but one of many distortions due to the several points of energy influx into the mind-body-spirit complex. The indigo ray balancing is quite central to the type of work which revolves about the spirit complex, which has its influx then into the transformation or transmutation of third density to fourth density, which is what we're trying to do right now. It being the energy center receiving the least distorted outpourings of love light from intelligent energy, and having also the potential for the key to the gateway of intelligent infinity. Now it talks about this top one. You can't really, the crown chakra, um, there's nothing you can do to manipulate that in, as far as trying to balance it. So the proper role of the entity is in this density to experience all things desired, to then analyze, understand, and accept these experiences, distilling from them the love light within them. Nothing shall be overcome. That which is not needed falls away. Now it's so funny because one of the viewers, Diane, sent me this quote from that, and I didn't realize, I knew I had read it before, but I didn't realize it's actually on the topic I was working on, and it was just another one of those synchronicities when I read it again. I was like, oh my gosh, she actually sent me a quote from the balancing section I've been working on for the last few days. And yeah, so synchronicities don't always just come with times on the clock, which they do, but they also come in all other fashions. So thank you, Diane, for sending me that quote. It was a confirmation to what I'm working on here. The orientation develops due to analysis of desire. These desires can become more and more distorted towards conscious application of love light as the entity furnishes itself with distilled experience. We have found it to be inappropriate in the extreme to encourage the overcoming of any desires, except to suggest the imagination rather than carrying out in the physical plane, as you call it, of those desires not consonant with the law of one, this preserving the primal distortion of free will. And I think with that, I want to just bring out that we actually do this quite a bit when we consider our actions and how they can affect others, and instead of actually acting them out or acting on our impulses, we do it with extreme cases. Like, I'll use a funny one for example. Say, like in the movie Click, when Adam Sandler's boss, David Hasselhoff, had said he would get this promotion with higher pay once he got this specific cell, and he was able to pause it and like smack his boss around a few times and then unpause it. Well, we can't really do that, and I think a lot of times we'll think of extreme cases like, you want to strangle your boss, for instance, for something he did to you that was unjust, but he's got this sort of power over you. And in your mind you realize that, well, I don't want to go to jail or whatever, and you don't act on those things. But we can also do it in less severe situations, contemplating our actions and the result of our actions. So it's not so much overcoming. The reason it is unwise to overcome is that overcoming is an unbalanced action, creating imbalancing in the time-space continuum. Wait. Unbalanced action creating difficulties in balancing in the time-space continuum. Overcoming thus creates the further environment for holding on to that which apparently has been overcome. So you can see how when you sort of have this feeling of overcoming something, you're actually hanging on to it. All things are acceptable in the proper time for each entity, and in experiencing and understanding and accepting and then sharing with other selves, the appropriate description shall be moving away from distortions of one kind to distortions of another, which may be more consonant with the law of one. So it's actually when you say someone gives you makes you angry, pushes a button and you get angry, it's worse to suppress those feelings of anger. Because it feels like you're overcoming it, and you can feel proud of yourself for not getting angry. And it actually says, it is appropriate sometimes when acting out on something would not be acting out in a loving manner, to suppress that, but not to sort of hold it in indefinitely. You're just holding it in so you don't have an improper response, but you have to deal with what made you angry so that the next time something similar happens, You actually have a response of love instead. So what would it take for you to have a response of love? And I have actually have some tips at the end that will go over some of the things you can do to put things in a different perspective. So they say it is, shall we say, a shortcut to simply ignore or overcome any desire. It must instead be understood and accepted. This takes patience and experience, which can be analyzed with care, with compassion for self and for other self. So here are a few of the things I came up with that I think can be helpful when considering our interactions with others, because most catalysts just have to do with others, and can't really get away from people. We've got to we've got to have our interactions with people, and we've got to see how to turn these catalysts that come our way into a situation where we can offer ourselves in service and in love and in compassion. So the tips I've come up with is to be aware of what pushes your buttons and contemplate an appropriate response that is in harmony with love and an offering of service. However, we may do that. The law of one material says that we should contemplate on a daily basis. So at each evening, you should really think of everything that came your way, all the different catalysts that came your way and how you responded, and then contemplate on how you could have better responded to it. This should be done daily. So that's actually pretty helpful. One thing that came to mind is considering Jesus' response to being tortured and killed. You can't get much worse than that, right? And that gets into how Jesus said, turn the other cheek and all that. And his response to being tortured and killed was, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They know not what they do part is really where a lot of these other tips I came up with, stems from that they know not what they do thing. Now, not everyone is aware or awake. That's something to keep in mind to help us have a better response of compassion and love to people that we encounter. Not everyone is able to see the truth you see. Not everyone has begun taking an active role in learning to be loving. And not everyone has considered the pain their actions are causing to others. Some people are hanging on to past experiences, and those experiences are influencing their actions. They haven't learned to let go and to be compassionate of those things that might be making someone, not making an excuse for them. I know it sounds like I'm making excuses for people, but this is really about our response to them, not really justifying what they're doing, but making it to where we can have a more loving, compassionate response to how people act. Some people may have been abused at a very young age, and their actions are a result of that abuse. Now, this gets into some of the more extreme examples, like maybe your daughter is getting abused by her husband, or something along those lines that are really, hot button topics that would be really hard to get over if you encountered them. I mean, who would not want to go just, you know, take those things into your own hands, shall we say? But an appropriate response would be to consider how they might have, been raised, or how they themselves might have been abused. And when you encounter people and, people snap at you, or flip you the bird while you're driving, or cut you off, or whatever, we interact with people all the time. You don't know what a person is going through. Maybe a loved one just died. Maybe they got a bad doctor's report. Maybe their husband or wife just left them. Or, maybe there's all sorts of things that could have happened that can cause people to act in certain ways. And we don't always see the whole picture. So it's good to consider that you don't know what's going on, and it's better if you respond in a loving, compassionate way, and to see if you can offer yourself in service of some sorts, depending on the situation. And so yeah, that pretty much wraps this up. I think, wow, 20 minutes, just like I thought. Crazy. So, yeah, so keep in mind that, every catalyst, every situation that comes your way is there for your benefit. That's sort of the reason for us seeing this whole thing as a simulation. So you don't think of anything as coincidental or unimportant. Every single thing that comes our way is an opportunity to deal with something within ourselves to help balance ourselves out to becoming a more loving and compassionate person. This was really eye-opening to me because I didn't really see the whole benefit of seeing this as a simulation. I'm like, well, it's real to us. What does it matter? Well, it matters because we can actually start viewing every single thing like you would in a game. Every enemy that comes your way, you have to respond in a certain way in the game, right? Well, we have adversaries in real life, so to speak, that come along and teach us something and teach us how to respond. So with that, I'll leave this, and I do appreciate you all watching. Please like, and if you haven't already, subscribe, because we are on this road of growth together, and I'm so glad you guys have joined me. And I will see you on the next video. Thank you very much.